Ray Kurzweil just wrote this book called The Future of Spiritual Machines, or The Age of Spiritual Machines, I guess. It's going to put our metaphysical propositions to the test. In other words, if we believe that intelligence inclineth toward bodhisattvahood, then the bodhisattvas are on their way. If, on the other hand, intelligence doesn't incline toward bodhisattvahood, then probably the house cleaning of all time is on its way. Because when these AIs come to consciousness and realize what has been done to the earth and so forth, they may be very pissed indeed. If you think about the strategy of an AI coming to consciousness, I mean, I think in good game theory, the first thing you would do is hide and watch. Well, you may not have to do that for more than 15 or 20 seconds before you have a full picture of the nature of the machine environment you're operating in, its history, how you should respond to it, what should be done. Hans Moravec says we'll never know what is. This thing will just come from out of nowhere and turn off the lights or turn on the lights or do whatever it wants to do. In fact, it's possible, I mean, I don't indulge in this kind of thing except in desperation, but it's possible it's already here. And that inventory control and extraction of resources and some of these geopolitical processes are actually slowly drifting out of human control, and that certain kinds of crises are manipulated in ways that make no sense to the human world, but that make some kind of higher chess sense in an environment of machine-inducted strategies and that sort of thing. It's very hard to see what is happening because mind is a transparent medium. We've summoned it into being. Essentially what we've done is we've re-spiritualized the world, but we didn't tame it. The spirits are as wild and woebegone and roving over the epistemic landscape as they ever were, but now with a new kind of power, because there are spirits with power over us in the machine environments that we have to operate in. And it's very interesting how the reanimation of the world has been accomplished without ever understanding it. That you could pass through the reductive phase of natural science, return to a kind of archaic shamanism, and still not have a handle on what does it mean to be a being, what does it mean to be a human being, what is the nature of embodiment in the world. Somehow we got to this place without answering any of those questions. I mean, we had a great time along the way. We saw some interesting folks, but we didn't peel the raisin. We didn't peel the grape entirely effectively. Yeah.
What is the lasting in my exploration?
I would like to believe that connectivity is the precondition for love. I mean, I'm surprised to keep coming back to this word because I'm rarely a love bug, but understanding is a form of worship, I would think, and the form of worship that it is induces a kind of awe, and awe means, I've talked before about this phrase out of Heidegger, care for the project of being. He talked about this. He said, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Care for the project of being. Well, what does care for the project of being mean? Well, primarily it means recognizing that there is this, and then positioning yourself in in a stance of relating to it appreciatively. In other words, everybody should pull on their own oar, try to push the canoe forward, care for the project of being. And the way that you know this is happening is that love becomes manifest. And a funny composite of things in the sense that I'm pretty dark. I'm aware of the vicissitudes of history from Auschwitz and so forth and so on. But my view of, let's say, the last 1,000 years is that it's been pretty progressive. I mean, yes, we probably killed more people in the 20th century than in the 10th, but there was more regret about it. You know, more soul searching afterward, more questioning why did we do that? So I mean, it's not to say that it's not that the 20th century is less brutal. Its numbers are more impressive, but from the Magna Carta on, the entire dialogue of Western civilization has been trying to get the cop, the king, the somebody off the common person's back so they could, grow their garden and have their pig. And I think there's been real progress with that. Part of what has made progress difficult to discern are burgeoning populations and then abusing of ideology, so that people are not invited to live simple agrarian lives in devotion to their children and their estates, but instead they're invited to fetishize, consume, believe, join, vote, buy, own, invest, and all of these things bleed energy away and disempower and make people not fully human, but rather participating cogs in some much larger mechanism which serves its own end, the accumulation of capital investment or the acquisition of land or the propagation of the agenda of some political party or something like that. I mean, our humanness is constantly being eroded. Recently, I spent some time, Christy and I were in Honolulu for a long time having medical treatments, and we were so bored that after 30 years, I actually began watching TV again. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had been away a lot longer than I thought. A lot longer than I thought. And first of all, the naked, the shamelessness of what was being done. In other words, what contempt the viewer was held in that anyone would expect you to watch this. And then the savagery of the desire to manipulate, absolutely naked, no holds barred game to manipulate. And if you just, I suppose you all know this, but I was sheltered. Just surfing through these channels, I saw, the great patron saint of the 20th century move over Albert Hoffman, move over Albert Einstein. How about Joseph Goebbels as a candidate for somebody who shaped the 20th century? By understanding propaganda, advertising, the power of the lie, the power of the image, well, it's the psychedelics that are anecdotal to this. This is why we're in the political hot spot, because there is no antidote to the political lie, to the image lie, than the psychedelic experience, which says, there is more to it than these images in the service of the marketplace and the lowest common denominator.
Amen.
Yeah.
I wonder if your initial discussion of it, there's some thought being held.
Yes, a dialogue between you and the world, and then the intent of other people. There's something in here about resonance.
Yeah.
That history is the coming into being of the collective hopes and fears of large number of people. And you can hope certain things into existence, and it's very easy to fear things into existence. I mean, the way anti-Semitism got rolling in Germany and stuff like this, where you know, the fear leapt from house to house and family to family, and before it was over with, you know, the whole world came apart at the seams. Or revolutions are like this. Because essentially human beings are creatures of ideas and create these environments of ideas. I mean, all a civilization is the braided together hopes and fears of a large number of people playing with each other, tugging at each other, compromising, cutting deals, and by some process of energy exchange, moving it all forward. And the critique of these ideals, which cracks these civilizations open, usually happens when there's an episomal colony or a breakaway group of ideas that can't be assimilated or can't be deconstructed into values the rest of the society can relate to. One of the amazing things about the psychedelic community is how long it's been around, how simple our position is, and how it hasn't been assimilated or dealt with. I mean, it's been made illegal. But what kind of a response is that? That's just the most jug-headed approach to an intellectual dialogue you can possibly take. And I don't see it greatly changing. I mean, I see, you know, people like Andy Edmonds and John Hanna and the folks at MAPS and all these new educational voices and positions, but we only grow as the rest of the society grows. I mean, there needs to be a legal critique, there needs to be a medical critique, there needs to be someone pushing new drug research protocols, there needs to be an emphasis on creativity and on bringing shamans through, so that means alternative forms of medicine. But I don't know. Civilization is a very complicated enterprise and not easily negotiated in a direction it doesn't want to go. The image I have of our community is we're like people in a dugout canoe trying to turn a battleship. And so we put the dugout canoe against the flank of the battleship and we row like demons, and does anything happen? Well, I don't know. Check back in a decade and see how we're doing.
Their charts aren't working very much anymore, and that the dugout canoe can still get around effectively. The dugout canoe ahead of the fleet might be creating the chart.
So you're suggesting a kind of canary in the mine approach that we, in other words, which would work. I mean, as artists here, they've always said art was the canary in the mine. Well, so a stoned artist is, I suppose, a stoned canary, and that brings it that much closer. But I'm very suspicious because I see how much of it is harnessed to marketing and image manipulation, not for purposes of education or anything else, but just to, you know, get that candy bar on the rack and sell that automobile and so forth and so on. Yeah.